Hey everyone, this is Mark Schillinger, founder of the nonprofit Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. The Young Men's Ultimate Weekend is a wilderness rite-of-passage adventure camp for young men ages 13 to 20. Thousands of young men from all different economical, social, and racial backgrounds have graduated from this initiation. This life-changing event combines a weekend filled with outrageous fun with what I like to call resiliency training. And what I mean by that is this. Our mentors are experts at creating physical, mental, and emotional exercises that challenge or stimulate the parts of the brain that young men need to develop in order to build self-confidence, a deep sense of responsibility, and the leadership skills that they're going to need in order to make it in that outside world. If you want to find out more about what we do, you can call us at 800-719-9302 or email us at info@ymuw.org. So that all said, thank you for watching this interview with my mentor, Brad Leslie. And I want to begin to sort of first introduce him by telling you how much I love him. And I love him not only because he's helped me more than anybody else, start the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, but because I love him because of how much he loves his family. Brad will tell you, I love my family. I'm divorced. My former wife and I are the best of friends. We teach the parenting workshop together. My children, Beck and Gabe, they mean everything to me. And I would not, that's capital N-O-T, underline bold, I would not have the amazingly loving, cooperative relationship I have with Gabe if it wasn't for Brad. No joke. What I love about Brad the most, as I said before, is not so much that he's taught me how to put on rite-of-passage events, but how much he loves his family. This guy is a family man. So the way that I wanted to introduce you, Brad, is if you wouldn't mind, just taking a moment first just to tell us about your family, your children a little bit. Certainly we know Dorian, your son, helps you with YMAW, Young Men's Adventure Weekend. And then, we can kind of jump in from there. But this is Brad Leslie, founder of the Young Men's Adventure Weekend. And I started the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend after studying with Brad. But I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit about your family and what they mean to you.
Okay. I should have had all this, my family pictures already lined up, ready to go. Number one son, Dorian, lives in Victoria on Vancouver Island, over there. Drives computers for a living. I just got a new big castle of a house. His sister Daisy, who's also my daughter Daisy, is also in Victoria with her husband Adam and 3 grandsons.
Beautiful.
And they used to be cute little rats, and now they're all monsters, basketball nuts. And Daisy and Adam have the best produce veggie store on Vancouver Island.
Beautiful.
Fruit salad. They're doing great. They're firing all cylinders, making huge impacts wherever they go. Dorian was with me at the first Young Men's Weekends, and he, of his own volition, hung around. I didn't force him to keep doing it, but he's been with us for 30 years. First as a teenager, junior staff, different managers, and then for 5 years he was the PTM. He was the boss and ran the whole thing, and took a couple of new directions and brought some other things in. And now he's comfortable running the whole things on his own. So they're great people. They're great people.
They are great people. And that's really what I want, the people who watch these videos to know that, both you and I, and probably all, I think it's safe to say that, all the men that have served under us over these many, many decades, they're great family men too. We really love family, and that's why we do this work, because we both share that.
Family's the core.
Yeah.
Family's the core of all this. If you got a good extended family, nuclear family, all that stuff, and you got the uncles and the aunts giving the kids a hard time, or I say an uncle's job is to correct or to corrupt. So having the core of the family is the core of all this stuff, which initiations form part of. So it's the vital element.
It is the vital element. We really believe that that's the way the world's going to change. So I wanted to jump in by first asking you, because I'm kind of curious too, I don't even know if I know the answer to this, like what even motivated you to start the Young Men's Adventure Weekend? Because it's a big undertaking.
We had no idea. let's see, through the 80s, I say I did all the courses. I'm a businessman, so I did all the sales business courses and psychology things, and the self-development ones, all the courses.
Mm-hmm.
And from one of those events, we were at a men's retreat one weekend. It was in January of 1990,
Mm-hmm.
up in a lodge somewhere, cold. Can't tell all the stories from it. We brought a couple of teenagers along. There's 150 men in this lodge. And some of the stuff that comes up amongst men when they're private and away from home can be a little raw and ragged. And the Monday morning, my buddy Andy Vine and I were chatting. So, it was a great weekend. Great, we did this, learned that. Yeah, but the teenagers and the stuff that the men, and Andy says, like a true Monday morning quarterback, like we all are, we should do a weekend just for teenagers. And I says, you're going to have to fight to get me out of your back pocket. Let's do it. And armed with nothing but let's do it, 3 months later, we had our first Young Men's Adventure weekend with 25 men, 50 teenagers, and we cobbled together a bunch of totems and ravens and bears and things, and took them out in the bushes and kicked the crap out of them. And off we went. Next spring, the guys, hey, let's do that thing again. So we did it again. And then next year, let's do it again. And I noticed after a while that the event had a life of its own and was dragging me along with it. The other men would come and go, but I kept getting dragged along with it. So I said, okay, I'm in. Let me get my boots on, sign up for work. And then I realized that, I have a job, a function here, and there's a natural ability or a gift to keep doing this. So I've been doing it personally for 30 years.
Yeah. And just for the heck of it, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars have you been paid to do this work? Is that 300,000 or zero?
Zero.
Okay.
Then you're
okay. At least we can laugh about it, right?
There's no money in saving the planet one teenager at a time. But now we've got men in their 30s and 40s who are competent, useful men that are probably better off than they were if they hadn't done it.
Absolutely, including my son Gabe.
If anyone wants to give me a couple $1 million, I'd be more than happy to take it.
If you want to donate to the Young Men's Adventure Weekend to pay Brad for all these 30 years, here's how you do it. Question, just because I've been leading men now for 20 years, you've been doing it for 30 years, I can certainly say that I've learned a lot over those 20 years about how to lead men, right? What was it like for you, like in the early days of what did you learn about men and how to lead them, from way back then to now? Like it must have been, for me, it was a huge growing experience personally, let alone communally, how to do it. How could you reflect on that? What would you say about leading men back then and now?
When I started, I was an English Harry Potter's school, north of England, sort of Prince Charles Twit, a bit of a musician, accidentally had a day job, no idea which way I was going. Started doing this thing, and hey, could you do this? Can you do that? It became apparent to me after a while that I have a phrase that's, there's two of them actually. One is, my men rise me up. Mm-hmm. So just by the interactions with men, you have a conversation, oh, that didn't work, I won't do that again. Let's try it this way, let's try it that way. So over the years, it's evolved. I don't know that I've actually taken a book course on how to manage men in production.
Right.
The main one is having an alignment to the context, like the big picture of what we're doing here. And if we all align to where we're going, then I'll take someone with different political opinions or different whatevers because we're all going the same way. And once you have that alignment, then we can move anywhere.
Right. And Brad has taught me that, and it's really come in so it's so important, because same with families. For those of you who watching who have children, it's like you have to have a purpose for everything you're doing with them, and anything that deviates from that purpose will take you off course. So I'm just interpreting a little bit, for you, Brad, what you're saying, because without a purpose, men will, I don't know about women, but I know men will try to drag something any which way they think it needs to go, even with good intentions. So having that purpose is so critical. What have you found, Brad, as far as leading men by sticking to that purpose, even when men are like in your face saying, F you, I'm not doing this, and you hold true to that? What have you learned about that, and how men respond to that?
Defined, we used to call it the mission statements or the purposes. I use the word context. What's the big picture here?
Yeah.
my overriding one was a couple of things. It's looking after the next generation of men is my one big one. And then for the Young Men's Adventure Weekend, it's the men of the village welcoming the young men of the village into man's world. And if someone comes in with some other idea, hey, let's do ayahuasca. Well, does that fit in with our context of bringing up competent, good businessmen? Mm-hmm. No. So if we have a clearly defined context, our big picture, all the details rain out of that one vision. And if something doesn't fit with that, if someone gets into a barb roll over some aspect of it, or let's bring politics in, I'm not feeling that one.
Yeah.
So having a very clear, defined, unwavering context, like we're aiming for that mountaintop, pick a mountaintop over here. We're aiming for that mountaintop, that's where we're going. And there's lots of ways to get there. But if you're going to go over here, no, that's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So the context defines the edges.
One thing I want to let the viewers know too is even at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, our event, Brad often comes down and gets to be sort of the grandfather of it all. And I've watched him in action. He's done it with me too, where there'll be lots of ideas that come at him, but he won't negotiate that mountaintop, and he'll take in all the influence. He won't stop you, and he'll decide like on that spot if it fits that purpose, which is great parenting skill as well. Brad, I want to say something. You mentioned the term man's world. And, these days, men are having a bad time because of the harmful actions of just a small percentage of men, right? Yeah, I'd love for you to tell us like the beautiful side, the wonderful side that that you've learned about men and watching them work, and how when they're working with you at the Adventure Weekend or at the Ultimate Weekend, they get pushed up against their own stuff. And yet, we know that men have a desire to be wonderful and beautiful and contribute. How would you describe what you've learned about, that beautiful and wonderful side of men as you watch them work, even when they're challenged? How would you sort of counterbalance what the world tends to think about men?
How many hours we got?
You have about 2 minutes to answer this one.
Inside of every man, there is ultimately the wise elder. The guys who are like 89 years old, have been there, done it all. Along the way, they start off, go up through make a little pyramid here. As teenagers, that's where you're experimenting with life. Try this, let's drive faster. Try polluting ourselves. That didn't work. Bad things, good. And along the way, they define what works for them. Usually from 15 to 30 years old, that's when people do all kinds of stupid mistakes. I call it research. They just find out, that didn't work, did it? Nope. You're going to do it again? I don't think so. And as they evolve, as they age, there's a certain life-given wisdom. It's like, don't pee on the electric fence. And life will tell you which way to go. So I know that inside of every man, there is the noble warrior, the hero, the divine masculine. All of this lies in there, no matter what shit he's doing today, or what his battle is today, or how he's emotionally reacting to what's going on today. Somewhere along the line, there is that spark of the divine man in him. And I'm talking to that guy all the time, no matter how twisted he is over whatever the drama of the day is.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So you're always directing your energy towards that divine self, which is beautiful. And how have you got, good.
One little thing, it's like the image of the Russian dolls that all stack inside each other. And the first one you see is the little baby, and then under 10 years old, I say you're in mom's world. And then the next layer off, you're a teenager, rebellious, testing, learning things. Then over 20s, the next layer is the warrior out, fight for battle for his life, his home, job, career. And then as each layer goes along, until you get to the last ones, which are the elders. And that's hidden inside of all these layers. And they don't just appear miraculously on your 20th birthday, or if you do a whoop-de-doo weekend event thing. They're there all the time. And if we speak to the elder early on, that will ripple through all the other Russian dolls that come through.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. In our work, the personal growth technology that we use at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend and with the mentors and in my coaching with parents, we call those virtues. Like we want to speak to the highest virtues that each person possesses. and see that person and keep leading them to who they already are. So it's very similar, to what you're saying. You use the term before, you mentioned the word emotional, helping men, deal with their emotions. And that's a big term these days also, like emotional intelligence, which is being used in part as a way to bring more awareness about how humans can have a more healthy relationship to their thoughts and actions and emotions. How would you say that the Young Men's Adventure Weekend, and the Ultimate Weekend for that matter, rite of passage is what we're talking about. How would you say rite of passage helps young men develop their emotional intelligence or their awareness about their thoughts and actions and behaviors?
How many hours have I got?
You have 1 minute for this one.
I
love telling you what to do. I rarely get to do it.
You're not the boss of me.
All right. I'm backing up.
At the weekends, kind of constructed so that they encounter a lot of emotional life.
Yeah.
We put them in teams so that when they're walking through the forest, where the hell are we going? There's like apprehension, nerves, excitement, and they can see each other going through those states. One's scared, one's happy. Yeah, I've been here before, it's no big deal. We give them challenges, and they got to figure out how to put up a shelter in like 20 minutes. And I don't have to, and all that comes up. We did some phenomenal emotional processes, all of which help them enunciate the inner terrain. And there's a trajectory through the whole weekend, so at the end of the event, the initiation, they've actually gone through 100 different emotional states with each other, where it's safe to verbalize, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm with this, I'm gonna kill the fucker, excuse the French. So they can see that the emotional states are normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we do the more intense stuff, oh, everyone's got this stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of normalizes that which is generally shunned.
One of the things that
trajectory through the weekend is probably one of the more significant elements of the whole thing.
Yeah, one of the things that Brad's referring to, which we've been talking freely about in these interviews, is the grieving ceremony.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is where young men really get a chance to let out all their past pains, frustrations, anger, all that in a very safe way. And so to help them develop their emotional intelligence, as Brad was saying, is like we let them know that that's okay. This is what men do. And we let them know that it can only be done in the safe confines with other men. It's not to be done with women and children and school and that kind of thing. So that's how we help them develop that intelligence. I assume that's what you're referring to, Brad?
Yeah. The Saturday night, we do an opening position talk. I call it the worst day of your life. We've all had them when this horrible thing happened. Some of us had several worst days of your life. Right. And we explore that terrain for as long as it takes, just to presence and bring up all those, whatever they had, because it's tough to go into the next chapter of life if you're carrying all this really horrible baggage. Now, we can't actually change any of the baggage. I mean, my dad still died, but you can change how you hold it, right? And kind of normalize it and take some of the pressure off.
Beautiful.
So it's a wild process. It's not for the faint of heart. But it definitely clears the pipes out.
It does. It really does. With regards to other activities at YMAW or YMUW, these are things that, and I'm going to ask you in a moment to talk about any of the ones that you think are really important in relationship to this. Both you and I know that there's many talented therapists, both men and women, that work with young men, and they do great things with them. And we also know that there's some things that just can't happen in that one-to-one setting in a room with a door, that it has to happen out in nature with other young men, other adult men, so that their emotional intelligence can develop. As you hinted at before, there's something magical that happens when young men realize that they're not the only ones suffering the way they think they are the only ones. Just a little bit of a generalization about just being out in nature. The spot that you guys do your weekends is amazing. What is it about being around other men and young men that help young men and going through all the things like you know, the sports that they have to do and the grieving and the sweat lodges and all those things, you know, can you speak to that a little bit about how that really can't be achieved in a traditional talk therapy setting? That rite of passage is so critical for the development of young men.
How many hours have I got?
I'm just going to keep lowering the time, bro.
It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I got 25 seconds.
About that.
Until about 400 years ago, 500 years ago, we lived in the wilderness, out in farms and cabins and tents and whatever, occasional castle. But the castle was just a little thing. We've lived in wilderness, pounding our hands on the ground, climbing trees, chopping trees, jumping in the ocean, swimming, kayaking, the canoes across the ocean, all that stuff. We had a direct connection with nature and earth, trees, airs, forest, which is part of our genetic wiring, that because this social experiment of the last 500 years, which I think is failing, we've gotten away from all of that. At our weekends, which I'll mention is outside of Vancouver, BC, and Canada, we have this 100-mile long lake. We go 50 miles up the side of it, total wilderness, forest. Actually, it's in Sasquatch country, and you can't get more wilderness than Sasquatch country. I've said for a long time that 95% of the value that the young men get is breathing green air. Mm-hmm. They're in a school bus bouncing along this highway for gravel road for 2 hours or more. You get out the bus, a couple of men yell at them, and they have to hike their gear through the bush for half an hour or so on their own. And they're breathing green air. And in doing that, you can almost see their synapses click, 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 click. So breathing green air in a safe place they come in as strangers, but they become friends or compadres pretty quick. And then with men who've done this before, so that it creates a safe edge for all the stuff that we do. It's vital to do it out in the wilderness.
Right.
We can approximate it indoors, but it's not the same thing.
Right, and you have to go on teams. They have to learn to work together. Have to develop skills that allow them to accomplish things. All that, yeah.
Yeah. In the olden days, a large hunting party or a small warring party would be 80 to 100 men and teenagers of whatever age. So that seems to be the critical mass out there. So there's enough people there to spark off against and rub into, and it's the sword sharpening sword stuff. Yeah, I didn't like the way he said that. Oh yeah, well, and they work it through, or they're facilitated to work it through. Another one about the wilderness is I've noticed, and I'm not sure it's in the books, but teenagers tend to have the attention span of a mosquito. Mm-hmm. So sitting in therapy for an hour at a time, zing, they're gone. But if they got to catch the ball and put the tent up and do this and get all that stuff, it's now, and it puts them more in touch with their, whatever that part of their brain is that can just act and react. Mm-hmm. So wilderness is the way to go.
Yep, the wilderness. You know, one of the things I've noticed over the years, I don't know how it works at the YMAW, but at the YMUW, the first thing that happens is when the parents drop off their sons, after they register, just so you viewers know what I'm talking about, is at registration, the parents have to leave their sons behind. The very first thing that I'm about to say is that the young men have to hand over their digital devices. It's not, you have to be a very big volunteer. We have about 10 of our biggest guys, they hand it over. And no kidding, it's like watching a heroin addict. These guys do not want to give those devices open so they can have their brains so focused, you know, because they love that sense of like, as you were saying, Brad, like they love to participate. They love to have a short attention span. You know, things flash across the screen. As soon as they hand over those devices, they're out in nature in the sense of expansiveness. And then that part of the brain that you're talking about developing, that prefrontal cortex, where they have to make decisions and really slow down and think about things and relate to other people. That's the part of the brain, you know, that I think we do a great job developing. I want to add one thing real quick too. Last night I was on a call with Brad. We're going to talk about his organization called Kingmakers in a moment, which is other men who do rite-of-passage events. But I was letting him know that the site for the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend the last few years burned down in the Northern California fires just last week. And I needed him and these other men just to kind of virtually hold me, because that site, to see that it was literally burned down. I saw the pictures. It was like losing my best friends, you know, or family. So I just want to thank you, because I needed to grieve that. I needed to move on from that in a certain way. And it was just beautiful how you let me see that it was like losing family or friends, you know, and we had to grieve it. So thank you for that. It was a really big deal.
Yeah, when we do this workout in the forest, it's not like going for beer after the baseball game. So this is profound stuff, and there's a magic and energy that happens in and around the vent and in the place that we do it. The Lake Wigos, I've been doing work up there for 30 years, and that's family. It's family.
Yeah.
So when our site burned down, and we had one in Napa Valley, you had Napa Valley, that one burned down too.
Yeah, a few years ago.
You guys have to stop that. Yeah, it's personal. It's family.
It's very personal. Thank you. One of the things that Brad does is he's involved with an organization called Kingmakers, which I kind of referenced a few minutes ago. So Brad, if you could tell us a little bit about what that organization is, a little bit about how it maybe came into being and what its purpose is, that would be great. I'd appreciate that.
Great, thanks. So let's see, about 10 years ago, another one of these men's organizations had a big conference in Vegas. Hate the place, but good conference. Mm-hmm. And they're doing sessions on higher purpose, careers, financing, relationships, and stuff. And on the last day of the wrap-up session, the plenary session, I stood up and said, I've been working with teenagers for the last 20 years doing initiations out in the wilderness. Anybody interested? And I heard this scuffling behind me. I turned around, and there's like 20, 30 men standing there. So I pointed to the first one, and I said, take all the names and numbers. We're going to have a meeting a week on Wednesday. So we had our first call, and who's doing what, and they're all scout leaders, hockey coaches, baseball coaches, in some way dealing with teenagers. So, oh, I think we found something here. And then it gelled down to a number of us were leaders of men's events, like Mark's organization and a few other ones, teenagers events, specifically rites of passage initiation. This is not just scout camp or Bible camp. They're good things, but this is the ragged edge of initiation. So after about a month of arguing, we came up with the name Kingmakers, because through all of our efforts, we're going to make one king. Actually, it speaks to the king inside of each of us. So we will raise the king. And we exist as, first of all, it's an elders bench where senior men in this work can get together and hang out, because we're the only ones that can understand what we're going through in the evolution of the management, men, the vision, context, how we deal with this plague, for example. Mm-hmm. So we exist as a resource and support for any other organization, and we've actually helped start a couple of other ones in various parts of North America. So we're Boston, Vancouver, Toronto, a bunch in California, some of the deep south. Men hear about us, they drift in, they come in for a while. Over the years, there's probably been 30 or so of us. Mm-hmm. We're the major elders of the leaders in this kind of world. So we exist as a resource and as the council that supports young men's initiations.
Yeah, and I have to say, since I've been doing my best to be on those calls lately, it's just a great resource. Any question? What's that?
It's a rich place to be. You're dealing with men who've actually been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years. Not, where's the money go? Or I don't want to do it. No, we've actually been doing it. And when you're playing with that level of men, committed men, it's the air is different there.
Yeah, I find like it's a refuge for me. It's like being a monk and just finding other monks there. I just find it a great refuge. So thank you for starting that. That's an amazing organization. And in a few minutes when we end, I'll give the viewers an opportunity, of course, to find out how to contact Brad. Two last questions, I would say. You were there for Lisa Ling last year, which was, a huge blessing, not just for Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, but for Young Men's Adventure Weekend and all rite of passage organizations, right? All of society, because both you and I are totally united on this conviction that rite of passage for young men, young women, and my belief too that for parents, because that's what I do in that hotel with the parents, a rite of passage for them. But we believe that rite of passage is a great answer for the problems that are happening in the world. What was that like for you? Because you were there, seeing a woman there. It was the first time we ever had a woman, at the event. How did you relate to her? How did the young men? I wasn't there. I was in the hotel with the parents. What was that all like? I wasn't there. How would you relate all that?
I guess it was about a month out. I heard that we were being televised, and actually Mark called and was coaching me on how to behave on TV. What was this? And then I heard that there's going to be a TV crew shadowing. Well, that's kind of cool. And then Lisa Ling, a woman in our weekends. And I got to admit, I went through the roller coaster and the washing machine of every possible, no effing way. And then I was kind of moving a little bit reluctantly to, well, maybe. But then I met her on the Friday noon and had a one-on-one chat with her. And I sensed where she was, again, where she lives, her context. She wants to make the world a better place. And she said that she'd present our work in positive tones. She's not going to sensationalize it. And oh, by the way, she's got 2 daughters and she needs a good men for them. So I said, so I moved to, if we get one positive thing as a result of this experiment going on TV, it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
If it goes bad, we'll shut it down, won't do it again. But even so far, just the chatter before we get onto TV, it's profound. So TV is not the place to do the kind of initiation, because TV is a different mentality. And then through the weekend, I'd run into her from time to time, and she appeared to be quite thunderstruck by the depth and the places that we went to with these young men. So I'm looking forward to see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
It was good.
When I spoke with her on Saturday night, when I came up for the grieving ceremony,
Poor girl.
she watched some serious shit go down.
Yeah.
And she told me how amazing it was, the work we did, and how many times she cried throughout the weekend to see so many men who care and love other young men and want to see them happy and healthy and holy. It was just, I will never forget that moment. She came to the parenting workshop a little bit just to film some of that. But when I hung out with her afterwards, she was so sincere in her observation of how we all behaved. I was just really proud of all the men, and the great work we did. One last question. Why should men, adult men, give up a whole weekend to come initiate young men? What's the value?
How many hours have I got?
And that I'll give you a whole minute for. Look how generous I'm being with you.
Our weekend is run on a few of us older ones that have a sense of the vision of the whole thing. There's a few of us, Fred Bissey, Mitch DeArmond, all of our senior men. They just have this knowing. The great bulk of our men are what I call good-hearted earthmen. They're the guys that load the sports bags for the hockey teams. They show up for the basketball teams. They'll go to the Lions or Kiwanis clubs and flip burgers. They're just good-hearted earthmen. They just love being associated with something that's good. And it's a place where they can show up and be a hero. Wherever you fit into this organization, there's a place for every man, whatever his capabilities and strengths are, and his challenges. I often say, and don't quote me on TV, the teenagers are just the excuse, because I'll never see them again. I'll hear about this one or that one. But the man that does the event, he's got to live with himself thereafter, and his life has changed. When you've done 1 or 2 of these things, there's this thing, it's here, it's like a floating rib. I call it the mentoring bone. And when a man has done production for one of these weekends, it wakes up that mentoring bone. He knows the impact he can have by just talking to and listening to a teenager, because he was one, and that teenager doesn't know what the duck's going on, doesn't know where to go. But if you can have an adult male to actually listen to him or give him some help, guidance, or hand on the shoulder, once a man discovers the huge impact he can have, for very little there's no training. You've got it all in here. You got ears, eyes, heart, and balls. You're a man. You're fully equipped. So when men wake up to their potential and their God-given destiny, that they have to do this.
Thank you.
You have to do this. The only way out. And if you don't do this, you wasted your time here. Because if you're not helping protect and further your community and your society, then why? Why'd you do this? And here's a great avenue for men to get involved, to make a difference, to actually leave an impact. One man came back, we haven't seen him for like 15 years, and he said, why aren't I doing this all the time? So when the men get hooked on this, they're hooked.
Yep.
It's a place to make a positive difference.
Yep. And you used a really great term. You mentioned Mitch DeArmond's name, who's been one of my main mentors and everybody's mentors. He's about the most brilliant guy I've ever met when it comes to dealing with young men. He always, trained us in the beginning days of like, this is our obligation biologically.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing you say.
I wrote an article called The Obligation of Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a certain position in life where you're comfortable, you're obliged to hand it back down the line.
Absolutely, to pass it on.
Don't
right?
just sit there and vacuum the house and mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Go back and reinvest into your community.
Absolutely.
Instead of bitching about the teenagers, go listen to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Brad, can you please let us know and the viewers know how they can get in touch with you and learn more about Young Men's Adventure Weekend, Kingmakers, and everything else?
Yep. The email is real easy. It's my name, Brad Leslie. Can you make the little thing go across the bottom there? BradLeslie at telus, TELUS.net. Brad Leslie at telus.net. And the phone number is direct to me, 604-626-3961. I'll repeat it, 604, Canada, 626-3961. Or text me and I'll call you back. You don't have to plan.
Thank you.
Love chatting about this stuff because the world needs this. Oh, by the way, the next generation of young men, thank you for all the work you're going to do.
Amen. So viewers, thank you for watching this interview with my mentor, Brad Leslie. If you want to find out more about Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, contact us at info@ymuw.org or call us at 800-719-9302. And again, thank you so much for watching.
Have a good day.